welcome back to Legally Armed, Locked, Loaded and Lawful. And today we've got Johan and Bernu on again with us. And we're going to be talking about something that's been a bit of a contentious issue in South Africa. And it's the period of validity of your SAPS competency certificate. So your bevoegdheid, hoe lang sit hy voordat jy moet hom hernie? What's the relative time frames that are needed for it? How long does it last before you need to renew it? It's always been a bit of a contentious issue. Some people say it lasts as long as your longest your longest license. Some people say that every time that you go and renew it, even though you've got 10 firearms or 10 pistols, you have to go and renew it anyway. So we're going to clear that all up today. We've got Johan Martin from Martin de Beer Associates, and we've got Bernu van der Heever from Legally Armed, who specializes in competencies, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah. So the period of validity of the SAPS competency certificate, how does that work? Basically, the section says no firearm license may be issued to a person who is not in the possession of a relevant competency certificate. That's in terms of Section 6 of the Firearms Control Act. What does the Amendment Act say, and what does it stipulate, Johan? How can we look at this? What does the law actually say?
Tim, the Amendment Act specifically has two different sections which are relevant to the validity of a competency certificate. Section 10 in brackets 2 provides that a competency certificate to use a firearm remains valid for the same period of validity as the period of this in this act in respect of the license to which the competency relates, unless this competency is terminated or renewed. And it's followed up with Section 10, capital letters A in brackets 1, that provides that any holder of a competency certificate who wishes to renew the competency certificate must apply in the prescribed form to the registrar for its renewal. Listen to this. Together with an application for the renewal of your license to which the competency relates. What that means is you need to renew your competency one or other time. It's not just an open competency where you gather firearms. It's never going to expire. Listen to what Section 10, capital letter A and brackets 1 says.
Okay, so every single time, even if I've got 10 pistols, one for self-defense, and I've got the rest are on Section 16 and 15, every time that license becomes ready for renewal, I must then go and renew my competency at the same time.
That's one way to see it. That is one way to see it. We'll get to that when I summarize the whole thing.
Yeah, because the impression that I've always gotten is that it runs in perpetuity. So if I've got a Section 13 and two Section 16s, I can just quickly, because the one's valid for 10 years, I can kind of overlap them or just buy another pistol every time.
No.
So we know in South Africa that there's the law. Then there is the shooting community's idea of what the law must be. But then we've also got SAPS who like to throw their opinions in. What is SAP's interpretation of Section 10 in terms of the Act? What do they say about it? Has there been anything about that from them?
SAPS has actually got a Bible. I call it the Bible of telling us what is happening with the validity of competency certificate. And it's issued, they circulated the circular on the 7th of January 2011, titled The Legal Consequences of Putting in Operation of Certain Sections of the Firearms Control Amendment Act 2006. We have a copy of the circular available for our viewers. Bernu also has one. And then what I will do, I'll only discuss paragraph 4. There's some other paragraphs also, but the most important paragraphs with regards to the validity of competency certificates are the follows. I'll go to paragraph 4 that says, unfortunately, I have to read this and bear with me, otherwise we're going to miss the whole issue. Paragraph 4 of this letter says it needs to be made clear that possession of a firearm without a license is criminalized, and that the validity period of the competency does not determine the lawfulness of possession of the firearm. The issuing of the license is dependent on the possession of a competency certificate, but the possession of the firearm only becomes unlawful upon expiry of its license, and not the expiry of the competency certificate. It's so important. Then a note that I made from my side is we all know that the possession of an expired license firearm is not unlawful because is not unlawful anymore because of the fidelity judgment, and that it's in such a case the owner can apply afresh for a new license. If I go to, if you can,
that's a very important judgment that came through there.
Yes,
with the
thanks to Mr. Martin Hood and Mr. Advocate Snyman. Paragraph 4.1 says, in respect of competency renewal applications, from the promulgation of this Amendment Act, that will be from the 10th of January 2011 onwards, the expiry of the competency certificates issued before 10 January 2011 can also not result into prejudice to the applicant, as the Amendment Act aligns the period of validity of the competency certificate to that of the relevant license. Paragraph 4.2 says, competency certificates issued after 10 January must be issued with the same period of validity of the relevant license applied for, and a period of 90 days before expiry of both the license and the competency will be applicable to those competency certificates. Paragraph 4.3 says, Section 10, capital letter A, also provides that if the application for the renewal of the competency certificate was lodged within the relevant time period, it remains valid until the application has been decided. The Act now provides that a competency certificate remains valid for the same period of validity of the license in respect of which it has been issued. If the license was issued in respect of self-defense, the competency will be valid for 5 years. If, however, the license has been issued for occasional hunting or occasional sport shooting, the validity of the competency is now for a period of 10 years. Right? So it changes because you've got more than one handgun registered to your name. You must remember, this whole circulation, and that's my note from my side, of remark from my side of, only touches on handgun competency actually, because we all know that rifle, shotgun and self-loading rifle licenses are all valid for 10 years. What will happen to that competency? It will automatically be valid for 10 years. Because it runs concurrently or it marries this license. It's all this changes of the Amendment Act was all about handgun competency.
Yeah, and it's a very rare instance where people will have a license for self-defense for an SLR or for a shotgun.
You may have, but then it's still valid only for 5 years, ne? If you only have a license,
yes, because it's for self-defense. Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
In view thereof that all competency certificates were previously, before the Amendment Act, valid for 5 years, persons who are in possession of licenses issued for a period of 10 years need not renew their competency certificate in respect of that category of firearms before 90 days before the expiry of the relevant competency, but 90 days before the expiry of the said license. That's part of the oaks that had licenses and competence before the Amendment Act, before 2011. So it's retrospectively. It also goes back to the validity of their competency and the license.
And just to cut in there, I see that they mentioned there that it's before 90 days. Does that include within the 90-day period, or does it have to be done before the time?
The same letter in other paragraphs makes provision that the police can accept applications within the 90 days. We all know, myself, include yourself and Bernu, that we tend to forget the dates and etc. So they in English, I don't know if it's vergunning. It's actually a vergunning. It's not within the law, but they do accept applications. I've been dealing with this. We've been dealing with this for many years, and the DFO normally doesn't have a problem with accepting within the 90 days.
Johan, as ek net gou hier kan inkom. Daar's 'n nuwe ding by die polisie nou en ek gaan Afrikaans praat vir die Afrikaanssprekende mense wat jy nou 'n afspraak moet maak by hulle. Baie van hulle is 'n aansoeke is 90 dae voor die tyd reg. En dan kom hy by die DFO en dan wil hy sê nee, jy moet 'n afspraak maak. Hy sê maar my goed verval oor 10 dae. Hy kry eers 'n afspraak omtrent 2 maande na die tyd, dan is hy ver binnekant sy 90 dae. Daai ou moet net seker maak dat hy net dit op skrif kry dat hy voor dit was, want daai brief het ek gelees. Sê ook daar dat die vergunning word deur SAPS gemaak om die aansoek te vat. Maar indien SAPS nie betyds daai aansoek kan afhandel en die lisensie goedgekeur kan nie. Ek praat nou van die vuurwapen lisensie nie. Dan verval daai lisensie. Dan gaan hulle terugval op die fidelity en dan gaan jy moet oor aansoek doen vir jou wapen soos normaalweg. So kry dit op skrif om seker te maak.
Bernu mentioned that people, DFOs working on an appointment system now. We had a meeting with General Mamoteti, and it's one of the things that we said was very frustrating. And I think it's been taken up with the police about 8 months ago, Bernu. And she did say that more a year ago. And we even have notes to prove that. But it's very frustrating what Bernu is saying. But I think also get something on paper, a written reason why the DFO cannot help you, especially if you are in time before the 90 days. There's no way that they can, because of their action, let your competency and your license expire just because they can't see you. Before all the issues with the licenses that could expire, that can incriminate you, the police could capture late renewal applications. And I don't think that, I'm still certain that they will be able to capture late renewal applications. So if it's to no fault of the applicant and he was truly in time before the 90 days, there's no way that the police can now say, apply for a new license in terms of the fidelity judgment.
Yeah, no, that makes absolute sense.
I go to paragraph 4.4. Thank you for that, Bernu. In the case of a person who has a license and competency certificate for a handgun for self-defense, as well as a handgun for occasional sport shooting, the view is held that the existing competency certificate remains valid for the period of the license. If you have more than one handgun, with the longest period of validity. Thus, when the license for self-defense is renewed, the applicant would be in possession of a valid competency certificate and need not apply for the renewal of a competency certificate. It says then, even though your license expires within 5 years, because you have more than one handgun, your handgun competency now, because of the Amendment Act, marries the longest license. That's why you don't have to renew the competency within 5 years. That will only be in the exceptional case where a person is in possession of a competency certificate for a particular category of firearm for self-defense and occasional sport shooting and hunting. There are millions of people that has that predicament. Paragraph 4.5 says the effect of the aligning of the period of validity of the competency certificate with the period of validity of the relevant license to possess a firearm means that when a person applies for the renewal of his or her firearm license, 4.5 is so important. It actually contradicts 4.4. He or she must simultaneously apply, you see the word must, simultaneously apply for renewal of his or her competency certificate, both at least 90 days before the expiry of the license, and irrespective of the validity of the period indicated on the competency certificate. That is also important. Paragraph 4.10, it is realized that this is also an interesting one. Myself and Bernu always thought that if you don't have a firearm, but you have a relevant or a competency, say for instance for a handgun, but you never applied from the time that it was issued to you for a handgun license, you don't have any firearms on your name, it's only valid for 5 years. I've got news for the people, it's valid for 10 years. Okay. From the time it's been issued, if you don't have firearms on your name. So if I go in the 9th year of validity of my competency certificate, I can still apply for a handgun. Okay. It is realized that paragraph 4.10 says, it is realized that numerous competency certificates have been issued to persons, but no firearms had been issued to this person. In such case, the competency certificate can only be accepted for a period not exceeding 10 years from the date of issuing of this competency certificate. After 10 January 2011, any competency certificate should be printed simultaneously with the licenses in respect of which the competency is applied for. When the license is granted, in order to reflect the expiry date of the license and simultaneously also for the expiry date of that specific competency certificate. An issue that we have, I've been dealing with that a long time, and yourself also, and Bernu. The old competency certificates always had a expiry date. After 2011, I think the police didn't look at this letter. They're actually adamant, the circular, that they should have a date, expiry date of the competency also on the competency certificate to marry the license. And the competencies that we know of after 2011 was a A4 page. It's only got a date of issue. There's no validity or the expiry date, and that confused everybody. Okay.
Johan, as ek weer hier kan inkom, ek wil dit net duidelik maak vir al die luisteraars. As baie mense daar buitekant wat 'n competency sertifikaat het, omdat hy sekuriteitswag is en hy wapens moet hanteer. So hy gaan nooit sy eie wapen hê nie. So hy kan dan van nou af weet dat sy competency is 10 jaar geldig.
Yes.
Even if it's handgun competency, his handgun competency, because he doesn't have a firearm on his name, his personal name, that competency is valid for 10 years. That is written in the circular. That is written in the circular here, and they must
paragraph.
And people must know that now. And to be clear on the paragraph also, what it actually says there is, when you apply for your new license, the day the new license is issued, there should be a new competency certificate, which we know is a paper now, printed paper, be issued to you with the new issue date, the same as your license date. That is what that's what
it actually says.
I know for a fact the police doesn't do that. They don't issue if you first time issue of a license, they issue the license, but they don't give a new competency with the issue date the same as your license. But then the license, the competency will automatically be as long as the license is valid. So when you have to renew, you're going to have to renew your competency.
Yeah, and the only time that 10-year period would be reduced, as we've seen before, is in, for example, my case, where I've only got one pistol for self-defense. So that's been reduced from 10 years to 5 years because I've got a self-defense license.
Yes, you only have a self-defense file. Yes.
And then in terms, it's slightly off it, but we're talking about proficiency now. So say that I've got a proficiency for all the categories. I've got proficiency. How long is that proficiency valid for before I can go and then apply at SAPS for competency?
If I can just come into that. The 2011 letter also, in one of the paragraphs, please, this is an important letter, says that your proficiency does not expire. If you did a renewal, in the beginning of the act, and you had certain firearms on your name, what happens is that you only had to write the theory and not do the practical shooting. That certificates are supposed to be still valid, but there's always a but with the police and the act. In 2013, a letter came out. In the same letter, in the 2011 letter that we're talking about, the Amendment Act, this specific paragraph says it stays valid even though you didn't do the practical side. But the sentence also say it all depends on if the commissioner decides now it's not going to be that for specific reasons, it can change. Now, what happened in 2013? Some people, when it was coming over, when the training provider SAQA and PFTC, Professional Fire Training Council, took over. When Professional Fire Training Council took over from SASETA, what happened is there was some fraudulent proficiency certificate issued. And then a female general wrote a letter to say that because of this fraudulent proficiency certificates being issued, from the day of that letter, if you did do the proficiency before 2013, okay, it stays valid, but they need a specific document to accompany that. You remember post-SETA and SASETA, your proficiency was fine, but your trainer was supposed to apply and hand it over to you a post-SETA certificate with a big badge on that. That letter of 2013 says your proficiency certificates will only be valid if you are in possession of a post-SETA or SASETA certificate before 2013 or 2011, whatever the case is. And because of that, and because of this 2013 letter, I was one of the culprits. I had to do my course over.
Johan, as ek net daar kan inkom, ek het die circular verder gelees en die circular is baie duidelik oor wat moet ook aangeheg word of wat se dokument moet aangeheg word met die renewal van jou kompetensie, né? En dit is baie duidelik daar. Jy hoef nie weer jou proficiency sertifikaat aan te sit nie. Jy moet net jou huidige kompetensie insit. Want baie mense het ook wat die polisie weet is voor 2011 en selfs nou ook mense wat nie weet, die gee hulle oorspronklike sertifikate saam met hulle bevoegdheid aansoek in, dan word hy goedgekeur. So daai bevoegdheidssertifikate is op die stelsel van die polisie. En baie mense het nou baie geld gespandeer. Ek en jy het saam die kursus gedoen. Ons hoef nie eintlik nie, want ons volgens hierdie circular het ons dit nie weer nodig nie. Dit is op hulle stelsel, dit is gesave. Ons hoef dit nie weer aan hulle te bewys nie. And the viewers must please go, Tim, if you place the circular, they must go and have a look at the circular because it is specific there. What needs to be in the renewal of the competencies. It's also very specific about some stations. When people comes to apply for competency, they say they must bring 2 people with for what is
character reference.
Yeah, for references. Sorry, and then it says the police can phone somebody for a reference. You don't have to bring somebody in physical to the police station. It's just not possible. So this is a very important circular for all the viewers out there and for gun owners as a whole in South Africa, because this is really clear on your way forward and on your way for the renewal of your competency.
Okay, we're coming to, can I continue, Tim?
Yes, yeah.
You can just mention paragraph 4 or the point 4 that I've mentioned, the interpretation of validity. Can you just mention and then I can discuss the case law?
Yeah, so the interpretation and validity of a competency certificate in terms of the Act, I believe it was tested in the High Court in an appeal review application. I think the case was Inqur Wildlife and Security Services CC versus the National Minister or the National Commissioner of SAPS and others. The judgment was delivered on the 27th of August 2021. What was the judgment in that? It seems to be quite an important case. What did the say in that instance?
Very so important case because the DFOs are very clever and they will say no, even if the circular say that we've got other instructions, but this case has been tested and the instructed attorney was Martin Hood. Thank you for him. And then his counsel was Advocate Marius Snyman, Senior Counsel, and it's such an important. There's no appeal or anything on this. So as we speak, it stands until today. It's been a 2021 judgment. The facts are that the entity's responsible person, Mr. Rood, he was an applicant, applied for the renewal of the business firearm licenses. And the police and the appeal board, they were the respondents, demonstrated that the applicant did not have a valid competency at the time of applying for the renewal of the relevant licenses, as his competency issued in 2009 had expired in 2014, and the application for the renewal of the business license was in 2018. Okay, so this is the period where the Amendment Act was retrospectively and supposed to be prospectively. And that there was no pending renewal. The police says there was no pending renewal thereof when the entity applied for the renewal of the firearm licenses. The applicant, on the other hand, says, no, we don't agree with that. Inter alia, that at the time of applying for the said licenses, the so-called expired competency was actually still valid because of the provisions of this circular that we just talked about, mentioned above. That the circular provides that the competency certificate's duration will be for the lifespan of a license of Mr. Rood. Not the business license. That's a mistake with the state made. They went to the validity linked to the license of the business. The Act and the circular say it's married to your private license, not your business license. Okay.
Because there's also no such thing as a business competency.
No, we all know that. The circular provides that the competency certificate duration will be for the lifespan of the valid license of Mr. Rood. If his competency certificate would expire before the expiration of his firearm license, okay, that the entity has been issued licenses between 2014 and 2019 on the basis of above provision. There were only 3 that were refused. The others all went through on the same judgment, on the same appeal board, and etc., etc. They only refused this 3. The others all went through, and they even issued new licenses. It's actually a very poor judgment and decision from SAPS and the appeal board. It was a moot issue to insist on the renewed competency certificate in this case, since the applicant has also already applied and has been issued with a new competency 10 years onwards, and it was issued in 2019. So he had 2009, he had a competency with a lot of firearms on his personal name, and it is in line with Section 10, capital letters A, in brackets 1, that you need to renew your licenses when your competency when you renew your license. That's what Mr. Rood has done, and they also discussed this in line with Section 10, capital letters 1. So that was in line with the period of validity of his own licenses. They were valid for 10 years. Okay.
As ek net kan inkom, Johan, dit is wat ek net nou gesê het. Baie mense in die sekuriteitsbedryf het net kompetensies om vuurwapens te mag hanteer. So hulle kompetensies is geldig 10 jaar. Dit is wat daai circular sê.
Ja.
En ons het self, ek en jy weet self van ons kliënte, het ons nou gesê, na 5 jaar moet ons maar hulle kompetensies vir hulle hernie, want dit is wat SAPS wil hê, maar SAPS is verkeerd daar.
Hulle is
die circular.
Ja.
So ons moet hierdie ding ook weer probeer om ondergril, maar Moteti se aandag te kry, laat sy kyk hierna. Ek dink dis baie belangrik actually, en ek dink is eintlik baie belangrik dat al die provinsies in die land, omdat ons takke reg oor die land het, dat almal dieselfde circular kry, want ek sê nou vir jou, in elke dorp is daar 'n ander reëling rondom die kompetensies oor wie, wat en hoe en waar hierdie ding baie duidelik is, en sover ons kennis trek, Johan, this circular wasn't retracted at all, so there isn't a new one in its place, so this circular is still standing.
Ja,
is still standing, and
it's never been retracted. Never.
And SAP should stand by that. From Legally Armed side, we don't like to fight with SAPs, but what's right is right. I mean, and you cannot go against your own circulars. I mean, then it's going to be confusion. And currently, I'm telling you, there is confusion and all over the provinces, and this is just, I think, the jackpot. There doesn't need to be any confusion anymore. The circular is straightforward and upfront.
Yeah, well, this was tested by this Inqur Wildlife case. Let me just continue with that. The applicant has attached proof to show that because Mr. Rood has 10-year licenses to possess certain firearms under Section 16, we all know that's dedicated hunting or dedicated sport shooting. His competency certificate should automatically extend and remain valid for the same period as a license. The court examined the application's position, Rood, position from 2 perspectives and or scenarios. You'll understand it now. First perspective says, since Mr. Rood's competence certificate has been issued before 10 January 2011, that is in 2009 when he received his first competency certificate, does the circular, they're asking the question, the court is asking this question, does the circular provide for its validity even though it had actually lapsed when the business license renewals were applied for, because the police said it lapsed in 2014, only valid for 5 years. Okay. The court then emphasized that the circular in paragraph 4.1, in that the applicant whose competency was issued before 10 January 2011 should not be prejudiced as the Amendment Act aligns or marries the period of validity of the competency to that of his relevant license, the longest license. Okay. Effectively, this circular brings everyone under the same regime by affording validity of a competency certificate, the lifespan of the license to which it relates. Mr. Rood's competency certificate that was renewed in 2019, it must have been issued to coincide with the period of validity of the licenses that the applicants possess, 10 years onwards. The second perspective or the scenario that the court had to think about was, does the circular save the applicant's competency invalidity by automatically extending its lifespan to that of the license it relates to? This question arises because if the licenses had themselves expired, then there were no license to marry to it. The court answer this perspective. The court is of the opinion that paragraph 4.1 also answers this scenario in that it makes the amended act retrospectively back before 2011. Thus, that an application for a license shall not be prejudiced by a competency certificate that expired before 10 January 2011. The applicant's applications for the renewal of the business firearm licenses should not have been prejudiced by the competency that expired because the circular applies retrospectively and also prospectively onwards. Therefore, the court found that the applicant would succeed in its contention that Inqur should have been reissued with the 3 business licenses it applied for, even in circumstances where the applicant's competency had expired. So,
ja, dis nogal 'n mondvol.
Yeah, but I summarized it for you. If I can continue with that, Tim?
Okay. Yeah, sure, please do.
Let's summarize it in a layperson's language. So we have the decided case, we have the circular, and that's why I say the following. If you have been issued with a competency certificate, but no licensed firearm is registered to your name, the competency can only be accepted for a period not exceeding 10 years from the issuing of it in terms of paragraph 4.10 of the circular. If you possess a handgun competency and only a Section 13 self-defense firearm, your competency will be valid for 5 years only in terms of paragraph 4.4 of the circular.
Ja,
if you have been issued...
Sorry, op daai punt. Sorry, ek wil jou op daai punt vra. Sê nou maar ou te pomp aksie, halgeweer vir selfverdediging. Halgeweer is 10 jaar geldig.
Nee, want hy is vir selfverdediging, hy is 5 jaar geldig.
Yeah, it's been
Section
issued
13.
on Section 13.
The reason why I say that, the competence is coupled with the type of license, and the type of license is 13 years, is Section 13, that's 5 years better.
Okay, so maar dan gaan dit dieselfde werk as 'n pompaksie vir selfverdediging en hy het 'n pompaksie vir sportskiet. Dan is hy 10 jaar. Dan gaan hy 10 jaar toe gaan. Nee, ek wil dit net duidelik maak want daar kan bietjie onduidelikheid vir die luisteraars. Ek wil net saamvat in layman se terme. Behalwe vir die Section 13 vuurwapen. Ek het nou 'n jaggeweer. 5 jaar terug al gelisensieer op my naam. My kompetensie is 5 jaar terug uitgereik op hom. Ek koop nou vir my 'n jaggeweer en hy word uitgereik. So in effek is my lisensie nou 10 jaar, maar dis 15 jaar vandat ek my eerste lisensie het. My advies aan my kliënte gaan wees, as jy jou eerste wapen hernie, met ander woorde jou eerste lisensie dan hernie jy jou kompetensie. Dan as jy jou volgende wapens hernie, gaan jy nie weer jou kompetensie hernie nie, want dit wys Dit wys
Ja.
jou 'n renewal date wat 5 jaar terug.
Hy bly saam met jou eerste wapen. Hy bly saam met jou
Dis
eerste
hy.
wapen.
Nee,
Dis die
ek wil dit
belangrikste.
net vir die kykers duidelik maak dat hulle dit
Yes.
reg verstaan, want baie ouens
Yes.
dink nou omdat hulle nou omdat daai ding sê hardop saam die validity of your license, dan dink hulle die lisensie skuif vir nog 10 jaar. Ag die kompetensie skuif aan. So met ander woorde jy gaan nooit jou kompetensie moet hernie nie. Maar
Nee,
die
dit
wet is
werk nie so
duidelik.
nie. Ek
Die
gaan
wet is duidelik daaroor. Jy moet of na 5 jaar of na 10 jaar moet jy jou kompetensie hernie. Dit is
en
nie
dis nie eens ons wat so sê nie. Gaan lees artikel 10 hoofletter A in hakies 1. Daar's nie 'n twyfel daaroor nie. Jy moet jou kompetensie hernie. Gaan lees dit net. Ek het dit al en ek gaan dit nou weer noem. Okay. Now we come to the next point. If you have been issued with a handgun competency and possess license for handgun and other handguns, your competency remains valid for the period of the relevant license in terms of paragraph 4.5 of the circular. We're coming back to the circular again. Thus, when you renew your sports shooting handgun license, you must renew your competency certificate simultaneously. Okay. Now, we come to what Bernu asked the whole time, and I've also summarized that for everybody. Can a competency certificate period of validity be indefinitely, even if you acquire and buy firearms regularly? As you said, Tim, as long as I buy guns, I don't have to renew my competency. It is not like that. Okay. Paragraph 4.4 and 4.5 of this specific circular, in my view, contradict each other in that the former 4.4, paragraph 4.4, stipulates that if you have multiple handguns registered to your name, that if you have that your handgun competency stays valid for the period of the license, which with the longest period of validity. Now, with the longest period of validity, that is where the problem comes in with handguns. Okay. Whereas in the latter paragraph, the latter 4.4, listen to what it says, stipulates that a person, when he or she renew his license, must simultaneously renew his or her competency. They can contradict each other in a way, irrespective of the validity of the period indicated on the competency. Thinking and what is the best option. I'm in favor of paragraph 4.5 that you need to renew your competency some other time because it is in line with section 10, capital letters A, in brackets 1 of the Amendment Act that says, I'm going to repeat it again. It says, that's not what I say, it's exactly quoted like it says in the Act. Any holder of a competency certificate who wishes to renew the competency certificate must apply in the prescribed form to the registrar for its renewal. That the important part of the sentence comes. Together with an application for renewal of the license to which the competency relates. Okay, the reason why I say I favor paragraph 4.4, it's been supported by a lot of other things. It is supported by the fact that the applicant, Mr. Rood, in the Inqur matter, did renew his competency, issued 2009, renewed in 2019, although he had section 16. He had a list of section 16 licenses. It's also supported by the fact that the longest period of validity of any license is 10 years. And having a competency issued without possession of any firearm, having a firearm on your name, is also 10 years. Supported by the fact that its validity, it's also supported by the fact that it's the validity of a license issued for rifle, shotgun, and self-loading rifle can not be more than 10 years. And supported by the fact that a muzzle loading competency is only valid for 10 years from the date of issue, and that is also part of the Amendment Act. So if you have a small muzzle loading rifle, you need to possess it legally. You need to have a muzzle loading competency. You need to go and do the course from 2011, and you only have to have that valid competency to have a self-loading rifle. My solution, whichever comes first, when you have multiple firearms, we only talk about multiple firearms, your handguns specifically, including handguns, renew your competency certificate every 10 years or simultaneously when you renew your license. And as Bernu said, once you started with this handgun, your second handgun, your first handgun section 13, and you have a next handgun license to your name, your competency issued with the next handgun, renew your competency for the second handgun, renew it together with your section 16 handgun. That is the date, 10 years onwards, which you have to renew your competency every time with that section, first section 16 firearm. That is what I say. It's very complicated. You must remember now, before 2011, the Amendment Act, all competency were valid for 5 years. Why they brought this in, I don't know. All competency were valid for 5 years. And I think this is the first time that somebody is trying to put it up, having all the information and even a decided case law. Okay.
In a very quick nutshell, if I've got a Section 13 license and competency that I've got, then I want to go and do sport shooting, then I purchase a second fire. Oh, excuse me. And okay, let me try that again. I'm going to have to cut that out. So I've got my Section 13 license for self-defense. My competency is valid for 5 years. Then I decide I want to start sport shooting, so I purchase a CZ Shadow, and then I apply for a Section 16 for dedicated status for that specific one.
Or Section 15, eh? 15 also, 15. You can have 2 handguns, yeah.
And people need to also remember, if you're going to do a Section 16, you need to be with an accredited, dedicated status association like NatShoot. We've had Hardest on the show quite a few times. So if you want to get a Section 16, you must go through an organization like NatShoot. So then I get my Section 16 license. Now my competency is now valid for that 10 years. But now the interesting thing, now this is where the interesting part comes in. If I purchase a third firearm, that doesn't automatically, if I purchase a third firearm in my 9th year of my second pistol's competency, that doesn't now extend my competency for another 10 years.
I renew it then, because you remember the first.
Then it must be renewed. So when I get my third pistol, I must in the 10th year of my second pistol's competency renew my competency so that the third pistol's competency can.
Yes, you keep your first firearms 10 years, and you must remember now, if you never buy firearms, it's only valid for 10 years. You need to renew it. If you don't have any other handguns.
En in die opleiding materiaal wat die mense doen met die opleiding of proficiency training, it tells you how long every firearms competency is valid. So you cannot we cannot say we never need to renew our competency. It is just not on. The Act is clear about that, but I think it's a bit of a clearer perspective now that we've got the circular and what we discussed today. I want to thank Johan, because the viewers may think you don't know how long he's sitting to get all the info together, and he's not just taking info, he's making calls and make sure of his facts. So Johan, thank you very much for assisting us here. But I think I hope this podcast will spread wide to help the people out there to have a more clearer view on the competencies. I think if you don't understand now, then I don't know what else we can do to help you to understand. Then you must maybe, then you can phone me and I'll try to help explain.
The last issue or the last point from my side is that, and I've just mentioned in die verbygaan genoem, the fact that security and most other Section 20 business firearm license have a lifespan of only 5 years. It is irrelevant to the lifespan of the responsible's validity of his competence certificate, as his competency is linked to and fall within the period of validity of his own private firearms licenses. And that has been decided in this case law, the Inqur case. So it's solid. There's no.
That's important, because there isn't such a thing as business competency as well. So everything is
to
your private.
So your company's business license has got nothing to do with your validity of your own competency. It runs with your firearms as the responsible firearms, private firearms. That is very important also.
No, so as I was saying as well, we're going to get a lot of people that are going to comment and say they disagree, I'm sure. And they'll vehemently stick to it. And we've said this previously, and I think in many episodes, is that when you make a decision based on these things, when we spoke about it with doing your proficiency training and stuff like that, when you do, no, I've lost my train of thought. When you make a decision based on what you want to do, So if you, whether you agree or not in the stance that we've taken down, what the circular says, and you want to go and do your own thing, at the end of the day, you've got to remember that you are the one responsible, and that you're the one that is going to be held responsible for that. The lawyers that you get involved to assist you aren't going to be held responsible. You're the one that's going to be personally held responsible. So the best thing to do is to play it safe and take good advice and do something that's not going to cause you trouble at the end of the day.
I just want to mention, sorry, Tim, that I also had a recent case where business firearm licenses, when they were renewed, the police refused it, saying that his competency expired before his application for renewal of his business firearms. I've done the appeal on all the details that we've discussed now, and the appeal board refused it, okay, saying I must go and read section 10, capital letters 1, okay, because it says you must renew any license. They say any license with your competency, and it's business license. They only had it valid for 5 years. But we now see, and I've done that, and I've mentioned that also in the submission in the appeal, is that it's actually valid for 10 years because it's linked with the guy's private firearm. And what's the next case if you get a refusal from the appeal board? Nobody. No, 10% of the population of South Africa has got money to take this frivolous, actually, decision from the appeal board to the review court. That what's example in the Inqur case. People stop that with the decision of the appeal board, and he's actually losing his license, etc., because he doesn't have money to go on the review to the High Court to get a just decision. So the reason why I'm telling that, if you don't listen to what we say here and you are just carrying on because the DFO says otherwise, you're going to end up doing an appeal. It's going to be refused. What do you do then? That's what I'm saying.